Hey, am I finally up? Hey, I think I'm here. Hi, everybody. Sorry about that. How's everybody doing today? Or tonight, or whatever? How about those worship services this morning? What do you guys think? Give me some feedback on the live services. Hi, Amy. Let's see who all we got here. We got Sherry Louth. Hi, Sherry and Daryl. Cheryl Miller. Got Cool Hand Luke. Teresa Bitters. Crystal Dove. Eric Gurman. Bill Martin. Gene Smith. DW. Joyce Koenig. Susan Eggery. Toby Hertenstein. Arter and Joe. Sutton. Angie Myers. Amy. Teresa Bitters. Cheryl. Eric Pulla. Luke. Joyce. Trina, Daryl, or Trina and Dennis, Angie Myers, Janine, hello, Toby. You must have been on the wrong you must have been on the wrong church website this morning, Toby. Gene Smith. All right, very good. Hi, Cass. All right. All right, very good. Hey, everybody. Thank you, Bill. So, all right. Thank you, Crystal. Thanks, Parker. Hi, Lisa. All right. Well, tonight we finish up phase one of the prayer. We're asking God to search us. And I kind of had the same feeling about tonight's chapter that I had about last night's chapter. And that was, thank you, Eric. That was that he used a lot of personal examples, which is good, but it made the chapter a little longer than some of the others that we have been reading. So, hi, Amy and Dave. All right. So, we're going to work our way through this chapter. So, appreciate y'all coming out tonight. I hope nobody got blown away today. We were thinking about going for a walk, and we got about as far as the end of the sidewalk, and the wind was blowing a lot too hard. So decided against that. But so I hope all of you have your feet on the ground and haven't lost too much of your outside furnishings of your house. So, all right. Well, here we are, chapter 1.7. And hi, Kim. Welcome. 1.7. And we're going to talk through the final phase of this, and then we'll have a yeah, well, at least, Joe, you didn't have to take it to the recyclers. That's where I was at today. So, hi, Beth Reedy. So, all right. So, here we are. Chapter 1.7. So, I guess, Gene, recycling is suspended. I hope not, because I took a bunch of recycling out to the thing today. So, all right. I mean, the opening question of the chapter here is really the one we need to consider. Are we ready to pray this dangerous prayer yet? Are we ready to ask God to search us, to look through us, to pick it up and search our lives? Are we ready to do that? Because that's a dangerous thing to do. And really, there's two components to being willing to ask God to search us. And here they are. The first one is we have to have the faith to ask, and then we have to have the courage to obey. Those are the two things we have to have. I mean, you lack the faith to ask or the courage to obey, all the searching in the world is not going to mean anything. So my first question is that I would like to throw out to you guys is, why do we need faith to ask? If we're going to ask God to search us, to look through us, to find the broken, dysfunctional stuff, to help to fix, put our lives back together. Why does it take faith to ask? Why is that the part the faith? Why is that where the faith comes in? Why does it take faith to ask? You guys all leave on me here? You guys leave me hang out to dry? Why does it take faith to ask God to search us? Dying to self. Yeah, that's not a very fun thing to do, Cass. I certainly would appreciate. I certainly agree with that. Yep. Faith he'll answer. Cool hand, Luke. I agree. Yeah. Faith in the answer, Kim. Yep. Cheryl. Yep. Faith and trust kind of go hand in hand. It's tough to have one without the other. That's true, Joe. We probably wouldn't ask somebody that question if we didn't have faith in them. And Joyce, it certainly is possible we won't like the answer. We all have asked a question before and not like the answer. Yeah, Parker, faith and trust again, hand in hand. You're right, Gene. Yeah. I agree with that. If we don't have confidence in the answer, we're not going to listen. I mean, we've all had somebody talk to us and we didn't have any confidence in what we were about to hear, and our listening skills just kind of bottomed out. So, yep, trust. You guys seem to got it here. God will reveal truth where we may not see the reality. Okay, yeah, good. A lot of these things go into that, and if you don't trust God enough to ask, you're not going to ask. And even if you do ask, you're just saying the words. You're not taking advantage of what the opportunity is, and won't do much for you. So, since you guys seem to have a pretty good handle on the faith versus trust idea, here's the next question. How does having this kind of faith help us to give God space to answer this question honestly? Hi, Candy. How does having this kind of faith help us to give God space to answer this question honestly? I mean, this goes back, you guys can jump in here, but let me say a word about this. This goes back to our desire that I think a lot of us have, embraced, I guess we could say, that we like God to fit in the box. You know, this is the area of our life that we have kind of walled off for God to do his thing. And if he acts within this space, that's good. I don't necessarily want him over here. And usually when we have that attitude, over here is where God wants to be. And in order to have faith in God and allow him to do the work that he needs to do, it requires us to trust God enough to give him the space wherever God decides he wants the space. And sometimes it leads us, as Cheryl says here, it's to a place that we can't see, a vision that we don't have, a future that we can't envision. And if we don't allow God a chance to do something that we may not currently understand, then we're going to be limited by the scope of our own understanding. So that faith literally broadens our horizons to things that we may not have thought of before or considered or even see as an option. We allow God to see things that we don't see. So good. So that's what allows God the space. The second thing is that we have to have faith to ask is first. Second is courage to obey. When God comes along and says, here's what needs to happen, it doesn't do any good if it doesn't happen. It's like, me telling somebody to look out because, something's about to fly off the table and hit you. If you don't make any attempt to adjust, me telling you does nothing. A warning is only as good as it is responded to. And to not respond to the warning simply places us in danger. And the warning does no good if we don't do anything about it. So it's the same as here. If God sets a course before us or plants a vision in us and we don't act upon it, or we don't have the guts to act upon it, what real difference does it make? Yeah. Yeah, Kim, I agree. Patience and wait, which nobody likes that. Yeah, Joe, that's right. We normally want to hand God things in our life and say, God, like for you to deal with this. And God's like, yeah, but I really want to deal with that. We're like, nope, nope. I gave you this. That's what you get. And a lot of times we like to control God that way to get him to do our bidding. And that's an exercise in futility. Yep. Eric, trust, give it over, give it up, allow God the opportunity to make something good happen, not on our timetable and in the way we desire, but in the way he wants. And that's why this prayer is dangerous, because the idea that God may have may not conform to what we decided we wanted. And unknown, Cool Hand Luke's got it there. We talked about this a couple times this week. In fact, I think we talked about it every night this week. Is a lot of us are fearful of the unknown. Teresa's got it too. The unknown is a scary and dangerous place. And that's what makes this prayer to say, God, I want you to search me. I want you to go through my mind. I want you to go through my heart. I want you to do all these things. Makes that a dangerous prayer because God may find things there we're not interested in dealing with. And he may have alternatives and options and future activities that is not fitting with what we had in mind. So that's what makes this dangerous. However, I'm going to do something that preachers are never supposed to do, but I'm going to do it for the sake of time. I'm going to ask a question, then I'm going to answer it because I'm assuming you all know what the answer is. The question I want to ask you is it possible to obey without courage? Can you obey without courage? No, you cannot. And, if you don't have the guts to go forward, if you don't have the guts to act, if you don't have the guts to step out of your comfort zone, obedience becomes impossible, because all it is now is about you trying to conform God or you trying to create God in your own image. And I absolutely promise you it doesn't work that way. So, yes, Parker, I would expect you to come up with the hymn, my man. Trust and obey. There's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. That's the song. And we don't sing that song because it's a catchy tune. We sing that song because it reminds us that God's will is what we want, and we're willing to work for it. And if we aren't willing to work for it, we're going to miss it. And Kim, it's about allowing for the possibility that God has a bigger idea than the biggest idea we can come up with. If I think back, how long ago has it been now? 30 years, 40 years, when I started debating and deciding that this is where I wanted to end up in my life. Did I have an idea that I would be the pastor at a church like Wayne Street and be able to be online on something called YouTube, doing a live cast, have a conversation with 38 people here over this thing called the internet? No, I had no idea. But down through the years, all these things have happened, and here I sit tonight. And I could never have dreamed of this. I'll be honest with you, I couldn't have dreamed of what we're doing right now 3 weeks ago. But here we are, and it's a time for us to live faithfully. We're considering this big idea for Easter, where and I just got some news about 10 minutes before I came down here that we took a big step in the right direction for this possibility of getting together for the Easter service. A big piece of that puzzle just fell into place, honestly, about 15 minutes before I came down to the church. So all these things are falling together. Again, things I never dreamed of and never could have dreamed of. But here we are. And Parker representing Verse Light, man. Appreciate it. Candy, can we blindly obey? Yes, we can. We have to. I don't know that there's any other way of obedience. It's about it's about obeying even when we don't see. If God laid out every single step from here to wherever, and we simply walk the path without knowing every step, is that obedience? I guess, because we have to walk the way, but I think blind obedience is the only kind of obedience there is. I think if we force God to talk us into it, that's less obedient than just being obedient in the first place. And but Candy may not be the smartest way. You talking blindly or not blindly? What do you say? Yeah, Joe, I agree. Experience with God, just like experience with anything else, helps us to trust it. a mere 7 days ago when I did this for the first time. I tried a couple of trial runs. I was here figuring out how to do it. I did not have a lot of confidence in this. I did not know this would work. But I got a little device here on my computer that upped my internet connection, and there are 40 people here, 40 people logged in as a part of this conversation right now, and I'm enjoying this to the point that we're having a conversation about what we could do with this now that Pastor Tim understands how to make it work. Someday when the coronavirus is a thing of the past, what can we do with this technology now that we understand how to make it work? And those conversations are happening. But yeah, Candy, I agree. You could say it's not the smartest way, maybe, but I think blind obedience is the only kind of obedience there is. Again, I think if we make God prove it first, that's maybe still obedience, but it's less. When we're willing to trust what God says and follow that, I at least in my mind, the way I'm understanding this, and sometimes this communication is a little difficult, but to me, I see that as more obedient than making God prove it first. So, hey, Valerie, sorry I missed it. There's a shout out for you. Appreciate you coming out tonight and being a part of this conversation. So, all right, good deal. All right, one of the lines of the prayer that we're talking about here from Psalm 139 that David writes is it's search my heart, O God. We've talked a lot about that. Reveal my anxious thoughts. We've talked a lot about that. See if there's any offensive way in me. We talked an awful lot about that. But then there's the last line that in this prayer that we have not done much with yet, and that is lead me in the way everlasting. Lead me in the way everlasting. And that is an opportunity that we have to realize that we are a part of something really great. Do you spend time thinking about that? How we're building a kingdom? We're part of a never-ending movement, something that has been a part of our world as far back as there is to go back in our world, where we're trying to help the world see God. A God that we understand as Jesus Christ. Are we willing to say what Audra says here? Are we willing to say his will, not mine? We're part of something really big, something long lasting. And do you see yourself as a part of that? I hope that you do, because that's the part of the vision we were talking about a little bit in the sermon this morning, about how, yes, we can hyper focus on things when we need to, when there's a particular thing going on. Like right now, we're all real hyper focused on the coronavirus, but we also need to kind of see what else is going on, because there are other things going on, and we can't get tunnel vision. At the same time, we need to see ourselves as a part of a big movement. Certainly, we have a role to play in that big movement, and we have a role to play in this great, mighty outpouring of God's Spirit and building the church and building the kingdom and so on and so on. We have a part to play in that, and we need to be faithful to pull that off. But I hope that you see all of those things, your faithfulness, your life, your work, your service, you see all that as a God-inspired part of the whole, of everything. The mission that you are on is being followed right now by churches all over the world who don't look like us. They don't speak like us. Some of their worship practices are far different than us. And they are doing the same work we're doing. They're doing it in a way that's appropriate to their culture, but the work itself is the same. And so I hope that all of you are seeing yourself as a part of something greater. So when we talk about the last line of the prayer that says, lead me in the way everlasting, we're seeing ourselves as a part of a great movement that goes beyond space, goes beyond time, goes clear back as far back as it'll go, and it will go forward as far as it can go forward. We are a part of this movement. We are a part of this work. And so I hope, you can see yourself as a part of that big whole, because all the little things that we do make contributions to what God is trying to do. And God is trying to do something that is mega big, way bigger than we could ever hope to get our minds around, because it spans so much space and so much time. So, Joe, are we ever really blind about it, or just unwilling to admit our lack of faith in those stuff? That could very well be, but I think when we're willing to put faith in something that we don't have all the pieces of yet, we're willing to take a step without knowing the final destination. That's to me obedience. That's true obedience. Is it frightening? Heck yeah, it's frightening. It's scary, but I think that's how we are able to express our faith, is by taking a step when we don't know the destination. So, yeah, Teresa, exactly. Every little thing makes a difference. Yeah. Yeah, Parker, my man, you are working for God, and we appreciate all that you're doing, and the great influence that you are on not only just kids your age, but also even other people as well. It's great. So, yeah, Candy, I think that God has taken a bad situation and using it for good. I think that what we're doing right now is a part of some of the good that can come out of this. I don't want to be one to say, well, a lot of people got sick and some people died and it's all good. I'm not willing to say that, but I am willing to say that even though we're dealing with something bad, there is some good that can come out of it. And, it remains to be seen what that is. But for us to, get in the fetal position in a closet in our house, that's not what times like this call for. Yes, do we need to have social distance and be safe? Absolutely. But there's still work to be done. So, all right, I got some people here agreeing with Candy, Teresa and Eric. Yeah, Joe, I agree. I'm sorry. When I first read that, I saw Big Mac in that line. Sorry, but I see what you're saying. I'm waiting for God to have that mic drop moment too. And I think that, while we may not be the one to hold the mic out and drop it, we can be the one part of setting that up, where all of a sudden the good Lord and his church stand side by side with something awesome happening. And I think that right now, none of us can see what that's going to be. I certainly can't see it. And if anybody can, then they need to make some phone calls and straighten some of the stuff up. However, I am faithful that there will be one. That's why I'm doing this live stream every single night. I come down to the church at 8:00 so I can be on here with you guys. And that's why, Daryl and Gene and the Awaken Band, put forth so much effort to put together what you saw this morning. And some of the conversation we're having about this gathering on Easter. There's a lot going into that. And it's because people see a vision that we don't know how it's going to pan out or if it's going to pan out. And so that's well said, because we're part of setting that up. So, yes, well, even in difficult situations, we stay connected, Eric. That is 95% of the point of what we're doing right now. I got 39 of you currently logged in, and I appreciate you being here, and because this allows us to have a conversation. In fact, I bet you're chatting with people in this chat right now that you've never spoken to face to face, even prior to COVID-19, and I think that's great. And my hope is that, when this is finally lifted and we're getting back together, a couple of you may realize, oh, you're the one from the chat, and I think moments like that are just, man, it's icing on the cake. So, yes, Gene, we are absolutely going to get to the enduring versus embracing. I marked that big time in the chapter. We are definitely going to have that conversation, because that's a big distinction that we will hit on real hard before we're done here tonight. So keep that in mind. Enduring versus embracing. Those are two very, very, very different ways of coping with the world. Yeah. Yes, I hope you guys are redeeming the time, because we as Gene says, we have time now to do things that we don't have time to do, or don't make time, I guess I should say, to do any other time. And that's do reading. I printed off a today between the premieres. I don't know how to refer to all this stuff, but I printed off a copy of the Book of Ruth, and my hope is this week is to be working on the next sermon series. I want to. I'm giving very strong consideration to the sermon series between Easter and Memorial Day, being on the book of Ruth. So I'm gonna be looking into that this week. So any prayers that you got for that next sermon series, I would legitimately appreciate. So stage crew for Christ's mic drop. I like that. I could see that on a t-shirt, Joe. Stage crew for Christ's mic drop. That's good. That's good. We meant to hang on to that one. So, all right, Candy. Yes, very true. Parker, agree. Good. Yeah, Cool Hand Luke is doing it right here. Look in the directory to match names and faces. Honestly, got my directory right here, and I'm doing the same thing. So, very good. That's an important thing to have. So, yeah, Teresa, being somebody who is relatively recent to Wayne Street, you're probably meeting a lot of people for the first time via this. And my hope is that you will be able to connect with some of these folks in real life someday, hopefully soon. So, yeah. Hi, Beth. Will do. Okay. That's blind obedience. Love it. So cool. All right. Oh no, I hit my tablet and I turned the page. Where was I at? Hold on, everybody. I lost my place. Oh, cool. Here I am. All right. Lead me the way everlasting. All right. Let's turn the page. Okay. All right. So when we're praying for God to work in our lives and do things for us, if you skip down to what is it, like 2 paragraphs down from where we just were, the last line of that paragraph says, we want God to lead us. We want God to direct us, to guide us, to become who he wants us to be. Let me read that again. We want God to lead us, to direct us, to guide us. Lead, direct, guide. To become who he wants us to be. Lead, direct, and guide to who he wants us to be. Is this not what God wants? Yes, Candy, technology is awesome when it works. Is this not what God wants? He wants to lead, guide, and direct us to become who he wants us to be. He wants us to live into his vision. He wants us to be faithful and obedient to walk into his vision. And part of that means we're going to have to allow him to examine us, to look at our hearts, to see some brokenness, to see some hurt, to see some wounds, to see some things that are there, and be able to embrace a new reality sometimes. And so he does want to guide us into that new reality, into that reality he has chosen for us. So, yes, Kim, let go and let God. I mean, that's a little cliche, but absolutely applies in this circumstance, is that we are wanting the opportunity to allow God to be in the driver's seat. I mean, I think a lot of people want God as their co-pilot. If that's the case, God's sitting in the wrong seat. But the good Lord would like to guide and direct us to a new place. And as always, thank you for your prayers, Teresa. Now, one of the things that I want to just bring out here, because we've hinted at this a few times this week, but I don't know that I've been real clear about it. How does the idea that we are allowing God to lead, guide, and direct us toward his preferred future, how do we... Hey, everybody, Rite Aid just emailed me. That's awesome. How does that idea of allowing God to lead, guide, and direct us toward a preferred future, how does that fly in the face of a wrathful God that we sometimes hear about in the Old Testament? How does the fact that God cares about us enough that not only has he chosen a future, that future is awesome, and he is working real hard to bring us around to living into that. How does that idea fly in the face of a wrathful, vengeful God? Because, and I know a lot of people out there, and so do you, who really want to talk about, God punishing sinners and burning up bad people and all this stuff. and how you better get right with God, and you better be orthodox, and you better do things right, and all these things. Um, how is a God like that hard to trust? Because a God like that, who's basically got the crosshairs on you, and you step out of line, he's going to launch the rocket straight at you and blast you off the face of the earth. How is that God hard to trust? Because I mean, if that's the kind of tightrope we're walking, that's not very inspiring. That's not very trust building, and it flies in the face of an image of a wrathful God. And I think that's part of what Craig, the author of this book, is trying to move us to, is to move us beyond fear. And if we're afraid that God's going to, crush us, that doesn't build trust. If we're talking that kind of vengeful, wrathful idea of God, is God wrathful? Yes, but I would say he's wrathful in the case of being passionate about protecting us, passionate about watching out for us. And as you all well know, if you've ever felt passionate about something, you can get a little, we'll say, energetic about that. And all right, I've been kind of neglecting the chat here a little bit. Janine, we do tend to get bullheaded. I know there's a lot of us can say amen to the bullheaded thing, and we want to watch out for that, because that can take good options off the table. Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, Joe, that we're talking about here, is God will step into our fearfulness, step into our injury, step into our wound, step into our offensive parts, and guide us through that. But only if we're willing to invite him there. And again, back to the wrathful God thing, it'd be real hard to trust a wrathful God with that kind of delicate procedure. Clearly, Luke, Christ's sacrifice very much goes into the face of this image of a wrathful God we have, clearly. So, hi, Linda Burkholder. Hope you're doing well tonight. Joe. Huh. Yeah, Joe, we can trust the pain and fear because we're used to living that way. That goes to speaking to better the devil you know than the devil you don't. That old expression. Sometimes that can function that way, because it may be bad, but at least it's a bad we're comfortable with. And again, reason number 900 why comfort zones can be a great hindrance to faithfulness, because we'll stay in a comfortable, familiar, yet terrible situation rather than stepping out to the possibility of something better because it's unknown. Parker and Kim, we're talking about the difference between the Old and New Testament. I mean, in some respects, I suppose. Yet I find some really wrathful images of God in the book of Revelation, and I find some very gracious evidence of God in the Psalms and when he deals with David. So, I mean, that's not a full across the board, but yes, clearly the gospel is a very graceful presentation where, much more than anything else. So, yes, God loves us, Teresa. I obviously I completely agree with that, but he does chastise. But sometimes we think, sometimes I think we make him a God of chastisement more than a God of grace and mercy and leading. And so, while I agree with it, you want to be careful about taking that idea too far. Gene, I love the pastoral epistles too. And First John talks about God is love, and yeah, some really beautiful stuff in there. Absolutely, Cheryl. I would actually take what you said there, which I agree with. Take it even a step farther. Is that love means not giving anyone anything just because that's what they want, but giving it to them because it's good for them. Now, sometimes their wants and their needs will be hand in hand. But any of you who've been around a child for more than 5 minutes, that's doesn't always last very long. So it's about doing good for people, contrary to their feelings about it. That's love, and that can be not fun, but it's always necessary. And sometimes many times the good Lord has to deal with us in the same way. So, all right, we are flying through this chapter at blazing speed right now. Let's go down to the next paragraph here. The very last sentence here. He's talking about the prayer to search us and try to mold us to his will. This is a soul cleansing, heart mending, eternity altering prayer. This prayer to invite God to search us is a prayer with eternal ramifications. It's about to allow God to step into our lives. It's about being transformed now. Now, will we experience all the transformation now? No, because there's going to be a transition from this life to the next that we're all going to make at some point. But this is the prayer that opens us up to abundant life starting today. We can live a better life in this world, and we can certainly live a better life in the next by allowing God to do His thing in our life, to show us the way that leads to eternity, like the prayer says. And what this does is by allowing this to happen, by praying this and stepping into His will for us, this prayer gives God room to work, gives Him space to make something good happen. Space for us to grow, space for us to heal, space for us to calm down. That space can be used in a lot of different ways, but that space can do wonderful things for us, but only if we will allow the space to be created, or we create the space ourselves. And that can be about changing practices. That can be about changing our mind. That can be about, changing our approach. It can be about changing, lots of things. But we make those changes in order to make space. That's the entire motivation to fasting during Lent. For any of you who may still be observing Lenten disciplines, we do those things to create space, so God has space to do something. Candy. So God did a 180 between the Old Testament and the New Testament. No, I do not think that. I do not at all think that's what happened. I think that Jesus was always the plan. I don't think it took God very long to realize that the problem of sin was not going to be fixed in any way other than Him stepping in and doing it Himself. I mean, if you read the Old Testament is one story after another of God trying to draw people out of their sin and back into relationship with Him. Some of the ways were mildly successful, but it didn't stick. It didn't make a worldwide, world-changing difference until Jesus came. Literally, God proved that if you want something done right, you have to do it yourself. And that was the purpose of Jesus coming. So when He came, everything got turned on its head. But I think that was always the plan. So I don't know that I would say it was a 180. I just think Jesus represented a new approach. And thank God that one worked and made all the difference for us today. So, all right. So talking about a prayer that has eternal ramifications, both for now and for later. That's what it means to allow God to search us and work in and through us in such a way. So, all right. So there are what do I got here? Four. There are four pieces to this. Thank you, Candy. There are four pieces to this that he talks about. He says, as I reflect on my spiritual journey with this prayer, let me recap what God has been showing me. Now, in these 4 points he's about to make, he's going to give specific examples. I am going to ignore the specific examples. I'm going to speak in generalities because I want you to take what we're about to talk about and I want you to apply it to you. So Craig uses this very well to apply to his life. And what he's done is he's showing us the model and giving us the example of his life. But his example is not the model. His example is the example. The model is the framework. And I want you to be able to take the framework that he lays out because I think it's actually pretty good. I want you to take that framework and be able to fill the blanks with stuff from your life. And as I'm filling it with stuff from mine. So he filled it with stuff from his, give us an example, which was a very bold and very valuable thing that he did. But we're not interested in Craig. We're interested in us. And so I'm going to use his framework and his example to allow you the chance to do this in your life. So, all right. After that, way too long explanation. The first thing that has to happen in the search me is we have to allow God to show us our hypocrisy. Show us our hypocrisy. Just so you know, the word hypocrite, if any of you who may know where that word came from, scholars believe that the first person in the world to use hypocrite in the way we understand that word today, meaning somebody who is basically saying one thing and doing another, the first person to ever use that word in the modern context was Jesus. He actually coined that word because what the word was is hypocrite. Was a word actually from the Roman culture that Jesus stole from them. I don't know if stole is the right word, but he took it from the Roman culture. And you know what a hypocrite was? It was an actor on the stage. I traveled through Palestine and in Israel back in 1998 when I was there. And they have unearthed many, many local amphitheaters around Rome. They love their stage plays. And I mean, many of you ever heard of many of them. And even Shakespeare, a long, long time later, took a lot of the Roman Empire and he wrote into some of the plays that he was creating. So the Roman Empire loved that. And everybody knew what a hypocrite was. It was what we refer to today as an actor. Jesus took that and applied that word, though, in a way it didn't make any sense in the original context. Do you remember who he called hypocrites? It was the Pharisees. He basically says, you boys are acting like followers and you're not. You're playing a part. You're putting on a face. You're trying to deceive. And so when he called them actors, basically. He called them fakes and frauds. That's the word. But he used the word in that culture that would have meant the stage actors. The hypocrites, again, to them, to Romans, that was not a negative thing. It was a job that some people had. It was what we would refer to today as an actor, a performer. And so Jesus took that word that was applied positively in this and really put a negative spin on that word. So today when I say hypocrite, you know I mean a fake. But that's not what the word started out in the first place. It was about a Roman stage actor playing a part. And so Jesus went to the Pharisees and says, you guys are playing a part here. You're not doing the work. I think you can easily see why that ticked them off. They did not care for that classification at all. But Jesus changed the use of that word to make it mean something else today. And now when we say hypocrite, that's not a compliment by any stretch of the imagination. And Jesus, in the way that he used it, did not mean it as a compliment either. So, but that's where he took the word from. It means stage actor. So if we ask God to show us our hypocrisy, what we're saying is, God, please reveal to me where I'm being a fake, where I'm not having integrity, where I'm not practicing what I'm preaching, so on and so forth. That's a bold request because, I mean, nobody, and I mean nobody, likes to have their hypocrisy called. Nobody likes that. Nobody likes to be accused of being a fake. I mean, there really is no gentle way to respond to an accusation like that. So if we go to God and say, point out to me where I'm not being real, that's a scary proposition. But that has to be where it starts. Because do you know how much energy it takes to play a role? How much energy it takes to keep a facade up all the time? To be able to keep a fake face on? To try to remember who you are? And exactly, Toby. That's why we don't like to ask to point him out because we don't like our bluff called. Exactly. And yeah, and again, you're right, Luke. It's not like God's not aware. It's not like he's not aware of where we're being fake. You know, and you all have seen this. There's nothing more obnoxious than somebody putting up a face and we're looking at them going, I'm not buying that and you're not buying that. That is annoying. And so when God sees through our garbage to call us, you know, to see the real us behind the fake us that we're trying to put out there, that what that does is by putting down those masks, by lowering is the wrong word, but by putting away expectations that we're trying to create, by setting aside you know, all the energy we're expending to make the world see us in a certain light. When we set all that aside, think about how much space that opens up. That opens up an amazing amount of space. And in opening up that space, God now says, wow, look at all this room I have to work. And that creates a lot of space for us to grow. It frees a lot of energy for us to serve when we're not spending up all this time trying to keep up a phony facade. I'm sorry, everybody. My voice is going. So that's what we need to watch out for. Is understand if we're asking. I mean, we are literally asking God to call our bluff. And I defy you to find a better definition of something intimidating than that. All right, second, as if asking God to call our bluff wasn't bad enough, the second thing is we ask God to know our anxious thoughts. Friends, we don't want anybody to know our anxious thoughts. You know, there are certain things we're anxious about that we would like to keep that between us and us. And we're not interested in sharing that with anybody else. So to ask God to say, here's something I'm legitimately frightened about. Here's something I'm scared of. Here's something I'm concerned about. To go to God and say that, that's a scary proposition. You know, not only have we said, God, will you point out where I'm fake? Now we're saying, God, will you point out where I hurt? Now, here's the thing I want you to think about. You know, it is ridiculously frightening to allow somebody that kind of access to us, to allow even God to come into our lives. Again, it's not like he's going to be shocked by anything he finds there, but we like to keep that stuff secret. We like to keep that stuff buried. And to invite God in to take a look at that can be very frightening. Okay, so that's the frightening part. But here's the other side. How much intimacy can be built in a relationship where this kind of sharing takes place? I mean, to say to somebody, I trust you enough to tell you something that terrifies me. And again, I'm not talking about goofy stuff like spiders or something. I mean, I'm talking about the really scary stuff that we look at in life. You know, if you're afraid of the coronavirus, or if you're afraid of losing your job because of the coronavirus, or if there's family members that you have that would definitely be threatened by this thing, to go and say to somebody, I trust you enough to have this conversation with you. That is crazy close. That is uncomfortably close. And to allow God that close to you, that's close enough to hug you. And so to allow somebody to step into that being that close to you, that is a crazy amount of intimacy that many of us may not be all that interested in, because we've been burned by that too many times. A lot of us have put up the facade. You know, part of the hypocrisy that we put up with, or we put up all the time, is I don't need anybody else, which is stupid because we do. But we put that out there because we want to keep everybody further than arm's length. I mean, many of us have been training for the social distancing for the coronavirus for our entire lives because we push everybody away. But yeah, that level of sharing is an intimacy that is sacred, whether it be with your spouse or a dear friend or whatever, even with God. That's a very intimate connection, and that's what you're inviting. So you're saying, God, call my bluff. Now know what scares me. Now, the third thing is, I mean, we're only halfway through this, folks. Third thing, Joe and Audra, thank you. Yes, I'm sure, Audra, that has taken a lot of work between the two of you to get to that point. I have no question about that, as it would take a lot of work for anybody. Step number 3 that we're dealing with is look and see if there's any offensive way in me. Okay, so call my bluff, know my fears, see if there's anything in me that you can't accept. I mean, my word, we're basically like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and draw a bullseye on myself, and I'm going to hand you a bazooka. And I mean, that's essentially what we're doing here. So, yeah, in the midst of this, that can be a crazy thing. Call my bluff, know what scares me, and I mean, again, truly scares me. And then tell me if there's anything in me that you can't tolerate, that is against your will. Because God may, we all want to say, God, I'd really, really like it a lot if you would look at my life and say, one of the offensive ways in you is Brussels sprouts. Brussels sprout, we can't have them. We just, in this situation, we can't have them. We need more Twinkies, and we need more cookies, because and all of us are like, yes, God is awesome. Unfortunately, that's not how it works. There's a lot of things in us that God finds offensive. And again, we're getting to the nitty gritty now. It might be what you eat. It might be how much you eat. It might be how you sleep. It might be who you spend your time with. It might be how you spend your time. It might be your job. I mean, there's a lot of things that God might say, no, all those carbohydrates are not good for you. This lack of protein is not good for you. The cigarettes are not good for you. The alcohol, it's not good for you. Who knows, whatever else. Staying up too late and watching TV, it's not good for you. That is offensive to God. I created you and your body to be a temple. I created you to be able to sing my praises and do my work to the nth degree. And I filled you with passion that will make you so happy when you do it. And when you sit there with crumbs down the front of you, watching something on TV that you're not even figuring out what it is, in some kind of carbohydrate inspired stupor, that's not honoring what I gave you. And so to ask God to find offensive things in us, we think that God will point it out, and we all will be like, oh my gosh, I hate that anyways. Just make that go away. That ain't how it works. Chances are some of the things God's going to ask you to go, or tell you got to go, are going to be things that we use to cope, or things that we really like. And again, it's not that God's being mean. Friends, because I know. So if I know it about me, I know you know it about you. Is some of these things that God says has to go, you're going to look at it and go, yeah, I kind of saw that coming. I kind of knew the guy was not happy with that, and you are trading the kind of fulfillment of your own life and the intimacy you could have with God. You're trading that for whatever that offensive thing is. Keep that in mind when you think about how terrible it's going to be to lose it. All right, I'm getting behind the comments again. Yes. See, Joe, I think that's what I'm trying to get to is we are aching for this intimacy. We really do want it. It may scare the bejesus out of us, but we really want it. We want to experience it. And we don't understand why we have bought the lie Satan is selling us to have these offensive things in our life. Again, diet, exercise level, amount of prayer, books we read, time we spend, who we're with. We decide to trade that intimacy for these other things that God finds offensive. And then we can't understand why God never feels close when our lives are full of nothing but things that are offensive to him, because he's looking at this amazing creation that all of you are, and we're throwing it away by things that are so unfulfilling. It's embarrassing. And so that intimacy is something that we want. But I mean, to go back to what's his name was talking about in the sermon this morning, my friends, we need to go score some touchdowns for Jesus. And any of you who don't get that reference, go watch the service from this morning. But the idea is we have been designed to do this, and we will love it. We will love it. But we decided to trade that for something less because we're afraid and we've been lied to. And that's too bad. So, yes, Cool Hand Luke. We don't want to see the plank in our own eye. Man, it's so hard to see the plank in your own eye, but we're real good at that. But can you imagine with somebody with like a 2x4 sticking out of their head saying, let me help you with the speck in your eye? They're like, no, thanks. I'll just get a patch. I mean, that's kind of what that is. And thank you, Valerie. Barb, it could mean we're judging others because, I mean, if you think about these things, we're real good at doing them to others, right? I mean, are we not really good at calling each other's bluff? Are we not really good to think that we figure out what makes someone else anxious? Aren't we really quick to say, you have offended me in this particular way? Yeah. But you turn that, you point at somebody, you point these fingers back at yourself. We're not so good at that. And because we much rather point it out at other people. That's more fun anyways. But I want to watch out for that. Yes, Joe, I am. What's his name? Thank you for getting the joke. All right. So the idea here is that we are doing these three things. I've only gotten through three of them. There's still one left. So after we ask God to call our bluff, after we ask God to know what truly frightens us, what makes us anxious and makes us worry, after we ask God to point out what things in our lives are offensive to Him and need to go because they're not honoring what He created in us, then and only then comes step number 4. Lead me. Once we've done the preparation work, we've dropped the hypocrisy. We have dropped, the offense. We have dropped the anxiety, as much as we possibly can, or at least we are willing to take what makes us anxious and speak to God in a real way about it. Once we do all that, now we're ready to move. And listen to this. You cannot be led unless you're following. Now, I know on face value, that sounds like something stupid that you put on a bumper sticker and it sounds profound, but it's really not. But think about how often we say we want to be led by God, but have no intention of following Him anywhere. We want to be led by God to a cool place. I'd like to be led by God to Cedar Point or something like that, but that ain't how it works. Often we're going to get led to battle. We're going to get led to difficult places. We're going to be led to serve in places we don't want to go. And that's the point of being led. If it's someplace we would have figured out how to get to ourselves, we're not getting led. We're not being led. And so that's why we want to be real careful about, getting mad at God for never doing anything, because we poured cement shoes on ourselves so we can't go anywhere because we either like where we're at or have no intention of leaving where we're at. And then we can't understand why God never inspires us to anything when we have no intention of following Him. Can't be led unless you're going to follow. All that ends up happening is God goes out for a walk because you can't join Him because you're not going anywhere. And so that's what you have to be aware of. Yeah, I mean that's why Luke, exactly. That's why these things are in this order. We ask God to call our bluff. We ask Him to know our anxieties. We ask Him to point out things that offend Him, so that we can, work on that, and then we want to follow. Not only are we not interested in following, we're probably not terribly interested at times in doing the other three things either. However, and this is what we need to keep in mind: what we're sacrificing when we refuse to do those things. What are we sacrificing? We're sacrificing life at the utmost fulfillment. You were created by God. He put you together. Psalm 139, the passage of scripture that this prayer is taken from. If you go back and read it, it talks about how God knit us together in our mother's womb, put us together exactly as we are. Who better to know how we could be fulfilled than our designer, than our creator? Who better to know what our optimum state would be than Him? Because He's the one that made us this way. And sure, there may have been things that happened along the way that were awful and some things that were great, but at the end of the day, we have the opportunity to live out our design. But because we have no intention of allowing God to call our bluff, we don't want God to know our anxiety. We don't want God to point out things that are offensive to His design for us. And we don't want to be led. And then we wonder why we feel nothing. We wonder why we have to take medication just to cope with life, why we develop addictions, why we develop bad habits, why we get into bad relationships. We do these things because we're trying to cope with a life that we refuse to live in the right way. And that probably sounds a little harsher than I mean for it to, but my friends, we really need to think about that. God designed us. Why would we want anything else for our lives than what He wants? Because even we don't know ourselves as well as He does. I've done, this is my 8th one of these that I've done tonight. 2 of these live casts that we have done I sang a song in. 9 days ago, I had no desire to do that. And now, what, 20% of the live cast we've done, I sang a song in? I had no idea I wanted to do that. I'm not sure I want to do it again. What I'm saying is, I would never have done this had I not said, God, tell me. COVID-19 is too big for Tim to deal with. I need to do something. And God said, go on the podcast, make this up. And you have 2 goals. Here's the 2 things I want you to do. I want you to tell people the truth, and I want you to make them laugh, because there's not enough of that going on right now. Give them wholesome entertainment and give them content. And that's why I'm here. You can debate whether or not I've been successful in that, and I would certainly welcome your feedback. But my point is, I would never have said, I think I should create a YouTube channel in the name of my church and then sing on it. I mean, I'm sorry, it makes me laugh to even consider that. But the idea is this now happened because I was faithful. And I'm not trying to put myself up as, man, I do everything like I do, because I don't want you to be like me. But what I am saying is that faithfulness looks weird. It looks weird until you try it. And then once you try it, you wonder, what was I waiting for? Oh, my word. I look forward to this every night. I could be home. I have a Wii U, and I've been playing Mario on my Wii U, and I've been stomping Goombas and all that cool stuff. I could be at home doing that right now. And none of you would think twice about it. Yet here we are. We're all here. You all made the commitment to be here, and thank God. Thank God for you. I appreciate so much you being here. So, my friends, this is what faithfulness looks like. You can't plan it. You can't control it. You can't dictate to it. You just got to do it. And then once you do it, you find out, wow, I never knew I needed this. And that's a cool thing. But it all starts from a dangerous prayer, where 5 minutes after the bishop said we can't have church services anymore, I said, well, I'm not going to sit here till this is over. I can tell you that right now. And God, figure out something to do. And God said, go sing on YouTube, which I do with my apologies. So, hey, you guys are too kind here in the chat. Listen, look at you guys go. I love you guys. So, yeah, holy cow. Oh my gosh, it's after 9 o'clock. Wow, you guys got me rolling here tonight. So, oh my word, we're only halfway through this chapter. All right, hey, I think sing and wash your hands. Part of that's good advice, part of it's not. So, all right, guys. I think Pastor Tim has made his point tonight. Let's get to the end, because I want to get to what Gene pointed out a little bit ago about the difference between embracing and enduring. Embracing and enduring are two very different things. And I think this is a great way to end this tangent I've gotten on here tonight. Is many times when we think about faithfulness and we think about these 4 steps, where we're saying, God, call my bluff. God, be a part of my anxiety. Let's have conversation about it. Let me know if I'm offending you in any way, and then lead me. We think when we pray that prayer, our idea is we're going to have to endure what happens, and we're going to have to endure it. We're going to have to, somehow grin and bear it. And that was the example he was using with his daughter, who suffered with a couple of different medical conditions that caused a lot of problems. But the idea here is that he said to his daughter, I'm so proud of how you're enduring this. And she called his bluff. And she said, I'm not enduring this. I'm embracing this. My friends, that's the difference. Sometimes the world looks at us and thinks that we're just enduring whatever God does to us. I say, if we do it correctly, we actually will be able to embrace what God is doing for us. And I don't want you to think about any of this, as intimidating as it is. please understand why it's intimidating. It's intimidating because you have been lied to. You have been lied to about a lot of things that are going on in your world. And one of the things you've been lied to about is that God only does hard things. Now, God does do hard things, and I'm certainly not going to get around that. But my friends, embrace what God wants to do. He is your designer. He has no desire to destroy you. His desire is to maximize you and to give you a maximum experience in this life and the next. That's like double blessing. And so, my friends, I want you to I want you guys to just be willing to embrace it, because that's how we can celebrate what God is doing and will do in our midst. So, so in look, this COVID-19 quarantine that we're in right now, it's awful. And if I got to have one more Sunday morning where I sit here by myself, I don't know. But my friends, just know that we need to embrace this time. What a time for self-reflection. What a time to pray and say, God, call my bluff. God, know my anxiety. God, let me know if I have something in my life that is offensive to you, and now lead me. What a time to step away from what we would call our normal lives and allow that to happen. And what a great opportunity. And I hope you're taking advantage of that. But if all we're going to do is endure this quarantine until it's over, we're missing the point. Maybe we need to embrace what God is doing, even though something else is going on that we don't like. And believe me, I'm all with you on that. We need to be willing to embrace the opportunity. And yeah, thank you, Kim. You are absolutely right. We are trying to embrace what the good Lord has going on, and that's an important place for us to be. So, with the idea of we are now going to embrace, inviting God to search us. Y'all ready to turn the page to the next chapter? Because now that I've spent 7 days talking you into allowing God to search you, now I'm going to spend, I believe, either 8 or 9 days now talking you into allowing God to break you. So we're allowing God to search us, to know our anxieties, to point out our offenses, and to lead us. That's only step one. We got 2 more steps to make. So now we're going to invite God to break us. And here's the thing I want you to take from this is something that God asked us to do that Jesus was willing to do himself. We pray this prayer almost the first Sunday of every month. Jesus took bread, he blessed it, and he broke it, and he gave and said, what? This is what? My body broken for you. It's the example that Jesus set for us. He's not asking us to do something he didn't do. This is exactly what he did. And we're going to look at 1 Corinthians 11:24, how we had Psalm 139 through phase 1. Now through phase 2, we're going to have 1 Corinthians 11:24. If you want to go check that out, I'll put it here. Maybe. There it is if you guys want to go look it up. 1 Corinthians 11:24. That's the scripture we'll be looking at for next week. So, and we'll be spending the next 8 or 9 days on that one, talking about now that we've, searched inward. Now we're going to see how God can break and transform. And just like the bread becomes the body of Christ in a representative fashion by our Protestant standards, we're celebrating Christ in our midst. So, hi, D. Yes, I will answer that question. Just 1 second. The harder the heart, the bigger the hammer. Yep. Why? Because the harder the heart requires the bigger the hammer. So that's where we are. Okay. Y'all okay? Everybody okay? Any more you want to say about this? If not, I want to answer Dee's question about Easter, because I really baited that hook. I can't let you go on that one. After our conversation the other night about possibly getting together for Easter, my brain started running overtime trying to figure out how we could do this. Again, please do not hold me to anything I'm about to tell you. I'm just telling you what we're working on. I can't promise it will work out. Janine contacted Zach Farrell about the possibility of using the library parking lot because it's the biggest lot here in town. Preliminary indications are that may work. Again, I'm not saying it is, but we've got a few more phone calls we need to make. But there's a possibility that may work out. I also contacted Ellen Hunter about the idea of her neighbor owns a local radio station, has a local broadcast radio station equipment that we could use in a confined area like the library parking lot, where I could actually speak and broadcast over radios. So you could be there in your cars with your radios on, and then I could speak to a huge crowd. I don't know how well we'll be able to do music on that, so that's something we're going to have to figure out. But that is the possibility that we could all be together in the library parking lot, with social distancing guidelines, and there'll have to be strict rules about do not get out of your car. I'm sure if the city council will allow us to do this, I guarantee that's going to be one of the rules. So you'll have to stay in your car. But if we can work that out, we could all be together, at least in our vehicles, possibly in the library parking lot, and speak over local broadcast radio. So, yeah, my DJ voice, right, Joe? So that's what we're working on. Again, don't hold me to any of that, but that's the current working that we're looking at. We consider doing communion. I'm relatively confident that will not be able to work out because of fear of transmitting whatever. So I don't think we're going to be able to pull that one off, but we are working on at least being able to be together, maybe doing some music over a live stream of some point, of some form, and then actually a sermon of some kind in this. If this pans out and we are able to make this happen, I will be inviting everyone in St. Mary's. I'm inviting every church. I'm inviting everybody to come. So this may not necessarily be just a Wayne Street thing, even though we're going to provide all the stuff for it. So pray for this, because a lot of people are going to have to sign off on this before it happens. But my hope is we'll be able to gather either in the library parking lot if we think it's going to be big enough, or someplace else, and figure out what that's going to look like. So, and you can toot your horns for an amen. And okay, yeah, maybe you could bring your own communion. I actually thought about doing that over this. I'm waiting to see what the guidelines are for how much longer the quarantine is going to go on. I'm relatively confident. Right now, it goes through next Sunday. I have not heard whether it's going to be extended, but my assumption is it will be. And if that happens, we will have and then not next Sunday, because next Sunday is already recorded. But I'm going to have a time where we can have communion via here. So you can have communion in your own homes. But again, that will not happen next Sunday, because next Sunday has already been mostly recorded. Hang on a second. That's not necessarily true. I haven't recorded the sermon for next Sunday yet, but the music is done. I don't know. There's still details to be worked out, as you can tell. But Easter Sunday, we are looking at having this community event for everybody in their cars. Parker, it's been moved up to April 30th. I have not heard that personally, but that I'm not at all surprised to hear that. So my thinking is that this won't be. This is not going to be over next week as we originally had hoped. So yeah. So anyways, that's what we're working on. Please pray for this. I am going to need some help, even though I know everybody's limited in what they can do. But this is one of those things that's going to take a small army to pull off. And I want you guys to, keep praying. I really want this to happen. The church needs to be the church on Easter Sunday, and we can't. As wonderful as this is, this is not it. This may be okay for a while, but church needs to be together. So right now, I need your prayers. I need a bunch of them, and I may be calling in a few favors before this is over. But mainly pray that the equipment for the radio broadcast will work. and pray that city council will be okay with it. And I'm not saying I don't want them just to say yes to it. I want it to be okay. I want them to. I want it to be a safe thing because I'm not interested in people risking their lives to be here by any stretch of the imagination. But if there's a way that we can pull this off with some stipulations, I want this to happen. So just know that we're working on it, and because how awesome would it be to be the church on Easter Sunday for the first time in a month? That'd be great. So yeah, so that's what I heard. I'm just praying the equipment will work. They're going to get it out and test it this week and make sure that it's functioning properly, and that's where we are. So, all right. Anybody else got anything good for the good of the order here tonight? Yes, prayers right now, guys, is what we need, and bunches of them. So, our plan is to be back together here tomorrow night. I got a link set up already, and I'll text that out tomorrow. Thank you, all of you who come to these. Again, not as cool as being together, but the best we can do right now. And I sure do appreciate at least getting to see your names pop up in the live chat. So, very good, Luke. So, all right. I love all you guys. Y'all know what to do now, right? What do you got to do? Thanks, Teresa. Everybody, go wash your hands. We'll see you tomorrow night at 8 o'clock.